start with the developments in Venezuela, where, as mentioned, our colleague Brian Sullivan breaking the news today that the country will ship sanctioned oil to the United States indefinitely. He joins us now from the Goldman Energy and Utilities Conference in South Florida with a very special guest. Hi, Brian.
Kelly and Dom, thank you very much. That's exactly right. This is the interview of the day, the week, the month, maybe the year, who knows. It is the U.S. Energy Secretary Christopher Wright. Secretary Wright, thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Glad to be here, Brian.
First off, I think most people are asking here, maybe the American people even outside of CNBC, is why? What do we hope to get with Venezuela and their energy and their oil?
Well, first we want to stop the importing of crime and drugs into the United States of America. We want to reduce the toehold our adversaries are gaining in the Western Hemisphere. I mean, there's a 25-page unsealed indictment for why President Nicolas Maduro was indicted. The Biden administration had a $25 million bounty on his head, but of course didn't do anything about it. So the problem of Venezuela for America and, of course, for Venezuelans has just continued to get worse.
But what does oil have to do with that? What is the role of oil and energy in this?
Well, what's the role of oil and energy is in this is Venezuela was a major oil producer, could again be a major oil producer, and is today still a significant oil producer. And I think it's the genius of President Trump to realize 25 years of a growing problem in Venezuela, nothing did anything to address that problem. He had a creative, out-of-the-box idea, first of all, to arrest an indicted criminal, and then say, hey, we're going to use oil in commerce instead of guns and soldiers to alter the trajectory of Venezuela going forward. I think it's brilliant. And I think the prospects of changing Venezuela from a country that's trafficking in drugs, guns, and humans and turn it into a prosperous, representative country that's not a menace in the Western Hemisphere and that becomes a prosperous American ally.
I think most people would want Venezuela to be free. They want the people to have a better life. It used to be the richest country in Latin America. Now it's the poorest, or at least among the poorest. Yep. It's a broken, failed state would probably be a fair term. And oil production has gone from 3.5 million to 700,000 or 800,000 a day, whatever that number may be. But what does taking their oil and then selling it have to do with helping to rebuild? Put the dots together between that news, the money, and fixing Venezuela.
Oh, you bet. So number one, we're not taking their oil. We're not taking their oil. We have put a blockade on and prevented them from selling their oil. That's choked off cash flow. They get cash from selling oil and from selling drugs and from human trafficking. So we choked off their revenue sources to get leverage over them. We're going to restart the selling of Venezuelan oil on global crude markets, put it into counts in the name of Venezuela, and bring those funds back into Venezuela for the benefit of the Venezuelan people. We're just going to control the flow of those funds so we have leverage over the people in power to drive them in a better direction.
Where then are we getting the 30 to 50 million barrels that the president initially referenced last night? And then this morning, the news that we broke was that that was going to continue indefinitely. Where then are we getting that oil?
So we put that blockade on Venezuela. They're still producing oil. They can't ship it to the world. So it's in floating storage in tankers, mostly illegal, sanctioned gray market tankers, and it's on onshore storage in Venezuela. So we are in dialogue with the Venezuelan government, saying let's work together to fix Venezuela. We got rid of the head of the gang, Nicolas Maduro and his wife. They're in prison. Work with us. Let's improve your country together. So we're going to now allow those tankers to flow, but we're going to market that crude. They fully understand this. They're a partner in doing that. We're going to allow that crude to be sold so that revenue can be generated, but then we're going to control the flow of that revenue to make sure it's going for productive reasons in Venezuela.
Let me be more direct. Is there a narrative in Venezuela that you are stealing our oil?
I have not heard that narrative. I've seen celebrations in the street and Libre Venezuela out. I think people are thrilled. They've lived under, between Chavez and Maduro, 26 years in a brutal dictatorship that's only devastated that country and hurt the whole hemisphere. So I've not heard that narrative at all. And of course, if it's that narrative's out there, it's untrue. We're just controlling the flow of revenues from their oil.
So you've had conversations here all day with many oil executives. I've seen them come and go. You've been busy all day long. What are they saying? What do the ConocoPhillipses and the Exxons and some others have to say to you about what it would take to get them to go back into Venezuela, which arguably is still very unstable, and they would argue unsafe and potentially uneconomic? What do they want?
Yeah, of course, if you're Exxon or Conoco and you've exited the country, you just need normal commercial business conditions, rule of law, and some security to go back in. That'll take some time. That's some reform and some changes in the government. We're trying to engineer, without going through the failed state, of just a collapse of the existing government, we're trying to engineer a transition of Venezuela to a place that Americans want to do business in, want to invest new capital in, want to grow new partnerships with. Hopefully we'll see some of those 8 million Venezuelans want to return home to their country. But that's a process. But on the other hand, you've got Chevron. They're there. They've been there for over 100 years. They're actually working in this regime. So with them, how can we provide incremental tweaks or changes to allow their model to grow even more? But the goal is to have Venezuela and United States trade and investment thriving and strong again to the benefit of both.
Have the CEOs of those companies, the Conocos, the other ones in the world, and I say Conoco because I saw Ryan Lance here earlier today, ostensibly, I think, on the way to meet with you. What are they saying? What do they want? What, would they say, okay, maybe down the road we'll go into Venezuela? When and why? Why would they do it, and when are they going to do it?
First of all, I spoke to all of them immediately. This happened on January 3rd. I was on the phone with all three of the CEOs of the companies you mentioned immediately. And first of all, I'd say just tremendous reaction. Chris, how can we help? What information can we get you? What data can we provide you? Can we put a team together to educate you on the resources there? How can we work with you to understand the situation in Venezuela, share our knowledge, and together see if we can help move this to a place where we'll reinvest and we'll go back in? But I think you will see involvement with them, help with them immediately. Are they going to put billions of dollars building new infrastructure in Venezuela next week? Of course not. You've got to have transformation of the conditions there. But they want to be productive advisors and helpers in that process. Chevron is on the ground, so we're getting on the ground daily
They
updates.
are. Chevron's on the ground because in 2007, they kind of worked with the Maduro or Chavez administration, Chavez back then. Conoco and Exxon did not. They got cast out of the country, and Venezuela kind of appropriated their assets. Both have sued it. Is some of the money that might be raised from the marketing, the selling of the Venezuelan oil, would some of that be earmarked to repay Conoco and Exxon for the ostensible? They've won legal judgments, but Venezuela is broke and has no money. Would some of that money go to them?
Certainly not in the short term. The short term right now, what we need to do with the revenue from those oil sales is stabilize the economy in Venezuela, stop the collapse of the Bolivar, prevent Venezuela from becoming a failed state. Think conditions have gotten pretty brutal in Venezuela. We want to see those start to swing back up, give the people some hope and opportunity, stabilize the existing oil production. The huge debts that are owed Conoco and Exxon, those are very real and need to be recompensed in the future. But that's a longer-term issue. That's not a short-term issue.
Is Delcy Rodriguez, who's now ostensibly the leader of Venezuela, she was the vice president, she oversaw PDVSA, which is the oil company of Venezuela. Some people I've talked to said Rafael Ramirez, this other guy was kind of the guy that looted it. Is Delcy Rodriguez, in your view, Mr. Secretary, the right leader of Venezuela right now?
Well, of course, ultimately, that's going to be up to the Venezuelan people, not up to me.
Yeah.
But she is the interim authority in Venezuela that myself and others in the U.S. government are dealing with. And, yeah, we have some optimism.
It's
Absolutely.
a petro state. That's why I asked, because oil and oil revenue is seen by most people I've talked to and things I've read, I'm sure you know this, as the economic way out to a better life for Venezuela.
It is. It's what made Venezuela wealthy and prosperous in the past. It can do it again. But, of course, if you have rule of law, a stable society, reasonable fiscal terms, and a government you can trust, the whole economy will boom and will grow. But you're right. Oil can underpin that. Oil can launch that.
How much of this action capturing Maduro, if any, has to do with rare earth minerals and or blunting China's economic impact in the region?
I don't think rare earth minerals really factor into that. But, the biggest thing was the threat to the American people, the importation of drugs in huge quantities into the United States, the trafficking in arms, terrorist organizations that are funded and harbored within Venezuela, the kidnapping of American citizens and then trying to trade them and leverage them. It's the criminality of Venezuela is why we went in. The Drug Enforcement Agency arrested Nicolas Maduro and his wife, of course, with the assistance of the Department of War. But this was a stunning operation. I could not be more proud of the American military today. My God.
It was a remarkable operation.
It is amazing, the quality of cooperation, the bravery of our people. And just to think about this, we could transform the trajectory of a significant nation in the Western Hemisphere with no soldiers on the ground for a few hours for an arrest.
Is Cuba in that thinking at all? Is transforming Cuba in that thinking?
Well, indirectly, yes. Cuba has also been a criminal state with mercenaries all over the world up to no good that has also been quite disruptive to the United States. They have this weird relationship with Venezuela. They get floated economically by free oil from Venezuela. That won't be coming anymore. That will be disruptive for Cuba. And, of course, they were the mercenaries. They were more loyal to Maduro than the Venezuelans.
They were his security services.
They were his security services.
So then Cuba's electric grid is largely powered off of diesel fuel. It's very old. A lot of that fuel comes from Venezuela. Without the fuel, there's no electricity. What happens to Cuba? Am I putting the pieces together here?
I think you are. I think we're going to see very significant pressure on Cuba. Again, a socialist kleptocracy that's impoverished its people. Cuba was another wealthy, thriving nation, and look at how low it's gone down. So if internally the conditions getting tougher there force internal-driven change in Cuba, all the better.
Final question. This has nothing to do with Cuba or Venezuela, but Greenland has also been obviously out there as a topic. I know that you work hand in hand on the rare earth side with your colleague and friend, cabinet member, Interior Secretary Doug Burgum. So some of this might be for him. I know that. Can you give us a status update on where we might stand with any negotiation around Greenland, some of their critical minerals? And does the offshore wind pause have anything to do with Greenland and Denmark?
No, I don't believe there's any connection there with Greenland or Denmark. Yeah, Doug Burgum's been a fantastic partner with mine on energy security, and the broader, how can we use energy and commerce instead of guns to influence world geopolitics? That's also, of course, that's the vision of President Trump. Let's use commerce, not conflict, to make the world a better place.
And that's the idea. I said last question, I lied. Is that then what this Venezuela? Because you know what people are going to say: another war for oil, like Iraq 20 years ago. Is this a war for oil?
Of course not. Of course not. First of all, with a war, we would need a bunch of troops on the ground. We don't have any troops on the ground. This is using commerce and energy to influence the trajectory of world events. We're going to try to take a poor, collapsing, kleptocratic nation and make it into a thriving American ally that's no longer a criminal threat to us. And we're doing that through commerce and energy.
And we get the oil, and we sell it, and that money goes into bank accounts that will ultimately, largely, if not entirely, be used to benefit the Venezuelan people.
Absolutely.
Correct.
That is the plan. We are just controlling the marketing and the flow of funds into Venezuela, so those funds can be used to better the conditions of the Venezuelan people and reduce the risks to the American people of the giant criminal activity coming out of that country.
Well,
we are not stealing anyone's oil.
Secretary of Energy Chris Wright, really appreciate you joining us here. Long, extensive interview at the Goldman Sachs Energy Conference here in South Florida, and maybe I will see you at the big White House on Friday at 1600 Pennsylvania. Thank you.
Sounds great. In exciting times, Brian, we've got a president who's bold, creative, and doesn't like war. He wants peace and commerce, and he wants to change world trajectory, and he's not bound by the ways everyone's done things in the past.
Secretary Wright, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time.